The Super Nintendo, one of the greatest game systems of all time. It has dozens of absolutely classic games like Super Mario World, Super Castlevania 4, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Star Fox, and Super Mario Kart. But amongst those diamond caliber games are some completely terrible lumps of coal. So let's check out some games that make the Super Nintendo look bad, starting with American Gladiators. Now, this is a collection of mini-games based on the TV show of the same name. This first one here is called Assault. As you can see, I'm trying to get my character past the gladiator who's shooting tennis balls at me, and I can see the exit right there, and I'm going to go for it, and he hits me. Then we get this next stage here where we get to swing into action against the gladiator, trying to knock him off that pedestal, and I completely miss. I tried again, and this time I was too slow. I didn't go far enough. Then there's this other stage where you are in a geosphere and you're trying to get your ball to land on the goals. And then yet another stage where you are jousting against the gladiator, trying to knock him off the pedestal. And here we have a top-down stage where we are trying to get the balls into the different goals. This one I actually found pretty easy. And then another stage called the wall, where you're supposed to, climb the wall and avoid the gladiator. I couldn't figure out how to get my guy to climb the wall, though. And then we get to the final challenge, where we're supposed to compete against our opponent, and I couldn't get my guy to move. He just sat there. He just decides, screw it, he's just gonna stand there. One thing I didn't like about this game is that you didn't get a lot of chances with the events. Like, you get one chance to swing against the gladiator here, and that's it. Would have been nice to, maybe get 3 chances. Either way, this game is rough, and frankly, I think the original Nintendo game is a little bit better than this one. This game could have been good. It's got some nice graphics, but awful gameplay and very confusing controls. Ballz 3D. Boy, this game is aptly named, isn't it? It's completely balls. And basically, this is a one-on-one fighting game where you are characters based on these 3D ball designs. This 3D balls thing was kind of a craze for about 2 seconds back in the day. Aside from the terrible premise, I really dislike the sound effects in this game. It's just so irritating. And the controls are just, I don't know, very sluggish. I think part of the problem is that the game is actually in kind of a 3D space. Well, I mean, as 3D as a Super Nintendo game can get. Because you can twist your character around, it's not just on a single plane like Mortal Kombat is. I don't know, I just can't imagine anyone actually wanting to play this game. It's just cringy. Not to mention it makes me kind of sick. Ballz 3D has annoying sound, terrible gameplay, and just a ridiculous premise. Batman Forever. Alright, so we've all seen the AVGN video on this game, and yeah, it's pretty awful. But I decided I'm gonna give this game a chance. I kinda like the fighting in this game because it's similar to Mortal Kombat, and I've always been a big Mortal Kombat fan. So that aspect of the game doesn't really bother me that much. The animation of Batman is pretty awful, and the graphics are kinda dark and murky, but I guess that's to be expected with a Batman game. I mean, do you want it to be super colorful? Oh, wait a second, Batman and Robin, I forgot about that. To me, the biggest problem with the game are the controls. Something as simple as trying to use your grappling hook to go up to the next stage, it's a pain in the butt. I don't understand why they couldn't have made that simpler. The sound effects are decent enough, but god lord, the music is just not good at all. So I got through a few stages in the game, and then I got to this point here where I could not figure out where I was supposed to go or what I was supposed to do. I was completely trapped. And it was at that point that I realized I really should be playing Batman Returns for the Super Nintendo instead of this garbage. This game has confusing controls, iffy graphics, and terrible sound and music. Bebe's Kids.
Bebe.
Is this based on a TV show or a movie or something? Because I've never heard of it before. You start off by going to this really great place called Fun World, and then before you know it, you get attacked by these giant rats, and you have to beat them up. First thing I notice is that the music is just the same 2 or 3 second segment repeated over and over again. Listen to this. Come on, man. Ugh. And then trying to beat up these giant rats. I mean, you'd think the enemies in the early part of the game would be really easy to beat, but these guys are just super tough. Plus the fact that you're playing a small kid in an amusement park beating up the mascots. What's up with that? This is probably the most monotonous game I've ever played. It literally took me 2 minutes to beat these mascots, where in just about any other game, you could have beat them up in like 20 seconds probably. Next, you get to beat up another mascot and, I don't know, a park executive or something? I'll be perfectly honest, I think this kid deserves to get thrown out of this park for beating up the mascots. At some point I just gave up. I'm like, yeah, just throw me out. I know I'm a terrible kid. This is a terrible fighting game with boring and monotonous gameplay and just awful music. Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball. Oh, here we go. It's the cream of the crap. One of the worst games of all time. And I remember when this game was being advertised in EGM magazine back in the day, and I thought, why is this virtually unknown basketball player, Bill Laimbeer, endorsing a futuristic basketball game that is just absolutely terrible? I didn't understand. I still don't understand. There was a whole glut of futuristic sports games like this back in the day, and honestly, I can't think of any of them that I would want to play. Least of all this one. The graphics are just super lame, and the sound effects are just awful. The music isn't too bad, I guess, but honestly, it doesn't really fit the theme of a basketball game. What I hate the most about this game is the gameplay. I can't even make a single basket. My opponent is just all over me all the time. I can't even move. This is definitely one of the weakest efforts I've ever seen for the Super Nintendo. Double Dragon 5: The Shadow Falls. So Trade West decided that they wanted to make Double Dragon into a one-on-one fighting game, and they did not do a very good job. The graphics are extremely cartoony, the animation is virtually non-existent, the gameplay is, I don't know, it's kind of similar to Street Fighter 2. But even on easy, your opponent will just beat the crap out of you. Trigger happy, win. I actually tried to give this game a chance, so I played quite a few different stages here. And what I have learned from this game is that the only way to get ahead is to just spam the same move over and over again, if you can get close enough to your opponent to spam it. I was able to do a few special moves, but I don't know, the controls are just extremely confusing. Like I said, the graphics are very cartoony, but I guess that kind of fits the style of the game. Another thing I noticed about the game is that there's a little bit of slowdown when you're playing it. You'll hear the music chug. And I'm sure that's just because the Super Nintendo is overloaded with all these awesome graphics. Countdown, win. This one just has some terrible animation and boring gameplay. The Great Waldo Search. Who was clamoring for a Where's Waldo game on the Super Nintendo? There's like one sound effect in the entire game, and it's this guy saying, "Where's Waldo?"
Where's Waldo?
Yeah, that's me doing the Where's Waldo rap.
Where's Waldo?
In this culturally inappropriate game, you look around on the screen for Waldo, who's wearing a red and white striped shirt and blue pants. You also have to look for clocks and diplomas and the dog who will take you to a bonus stage. And in the bonus stage, all you have to do is collect all the bones. Ugh, what's going on in this stage? It's like the druids versus the magicians. Is this really appropriate for a kid's game? Again, more inappropriate looking graphics with the animation on this one. Oh my gosh. And then finally I got to this stage where there's nothing but Waldos, and you're supposed to find the Waldo that's wearing the socks, but I couldn't find him. I suck at this game. If you could call it a game. This is definitely a game I wouldn't play again. The sounds and music are terrible, the animation is virtually non-existent, and it's really just kind of annoying. Home Improvement Power Tool Pursuit. Now this game is supposed to be based on the TV show, but it's really not. You play as Tim the Toolman Taylor, whose tools have been stolen and scattered throughout the TV studio. And as you can see, the first stage is kind of like Jurassic Park, where you have to find all the different tools. Now there are bolts in the game, and if you get them, they'll protect you, kind of like the rings in Sonic. You're allowed to get hit once you have at least one bolt. The graphics actually aren't too bad. The music isn't very good though, it's kind of low and muted. Now you are able to use your tools as weapons. As you can see, the primary weapon here is the nail gun. But you can also use jackhammers and sledgehammers and some other tools to get you a little bit further into the game. There's also a grappling hook that shoots out of your nail gun. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. My biggest problem with the game is that the controls are just very sloppy, and it's always confusing as to which direction you have to press in order to use the different tools. I wasn't able to get too far into the game, and it's mostly because everything kills you in about 2 seconds flat. Honestly, it wouldn't be too bad of a game if the controls weren't so sloppy. Also, the premise is just odd. I don't know what they were thinking when they came up with this. Hong Kong 97. This is an unlicensed game of the worst caliber. I can't believe this was actually made. Can you actually get a cartridge version of this game? It looks like you can get this for the Super Nintendo disc drive. Honestly, I didn't even know they made a Super Nintendo disc drive. And then some folks have actually made repro cartridges of this game, which I can't imagine why. The music is just a 5-second loop repeated over and over again in order to subject you to the Chinese audio torture, I guess. The game, if you could call it a game, has you shooting enemies coming from the top of the screen and trying to avoid their bullets, I guess. The end screen actually looks like it has a dead body on it, and that's just extremely creepy. I don't know the backstory on this game, and I really don't want to know it. I don't know, it's not even a game. It's like a tech demo or something like that. My IQ has dropped about 20 points just playing this game. I can't even string a sentence together after playing this now. My suggestion is stay away. Stay far away. Last Action Hero. Oh man, I had high hopes for this one. I thought it would be actually good. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you play as Jack Slater, who's just constantly being attacked by knife-wielding freaks and baseball-wielding freaks. Now you can use punches and kicks, but you cannot use jump kicks, which makes the game a lot more challenging than it should be. Also, your attack range just absolutely sucks. The range of the enemies is just way too far. Also, the hit detection is just ridiculously bad. The knife guys are a little bit easier to beat if you just kick them over and over again. They can't get close enough to you. But the bat-wielding guys, you have to trick the game, and that is to jump close to them, well, actually practically right on top of them, and then move to the side just a little bit, and then kick them or punch them in order to beat them up. Honestly, it's not fair at all. The character graphics are extremely derpy looking. I thought they should look a little bit more realistic than they do. Let's talk about the music for a second. Let's not and say we did, because it's terrible. It's just a repetitive loop over and over again. Not to mention the fact that it totally does not match the style of the game. So if you thought the movie was an embarrassment to Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, that was bad, but this is just exponentially worse. Lester the Unlikely. Again, we've all seen the AVGN episode of this game, but I wanted to give it a try and actually see if I could play it.
No.
It's a side-scrolling, well, I can't really call it an action game because there's not a whole lot of action in the game. You play as Lester the nerd who is trapped on a deserted island, and he's trying to find a way off. He's pretty much afraid of everything, and his kick attack is really lame, but at least it works. There's a few puzzle elements to it, like where you have to push this rock and climb up on it to jump up on the ledge, but I was having trouble figuring out how to climb up onto the rock. Do I jump on it, or do I climb on it, or what? Somehow I figured it out, and he climbed up on the rock, and I was able to move to the next part of the stage. You come across these spiked areas in the game, and you have to do these running jumps in order to get past them. That was actually pretty fun, especially when you can run and jump and then grab on the ledge all at the same time. Eventually I did pass that first stage and I was able to get into the cave, but then I couldn't find my way out of the cave. Now, I understand that later in the game, as your character becomes more confident, he starts to play a lot better than he does early in the game. I kind of would like to see that, but honestly, I don't know that I have the patience to get that far into the game. The graphics really aren't all that bad, and the music isn't too terrible, but I think it's really the premise of the game that people dislike the most about it. I mean, who really wants to play as a nerd like this? Mario is missing. Your goal is to play as Luigi, traveling around the town, I guess trying to find Mario. Nobody's being very helpful here. I go into these pipes and I just get lost, and I stop off at the Sistine Chapel and it's closed, and they want me to read this pamphlet about the chapel. I mean, come on. Yeah, I know, it's an educational game, I get it. One thing that really helped me out is once I figured out that there's a map that you can put on the screen. That made it a little bit easier to get around the town. The other thing that helped out was finally figuring out that you cannot walk down the middle of the street when going into the screen. You have to walk on the sidewalks, because when you try to walk down the middle of the street, all you hear is car horns honking at you. You don't ever see any cars, but I guess that's to tell kids not to walk down the middle of the street. At least the graphics and music are nice. I wandered around the game for a while and I couldn't figure out what the heck I was supposed to do or where I was supposed to go, and frankly, I really just didn't care. If Mario is hoping that I'm gonna find him, well, that's just not gonna happen because I got bored with this game pretty quick. Paperboy 2. This has got to be one of the worst games I have ever played in my life. The original Paperboy is kind of fun, where you deliver papers to your customers and break windows of your non-customers. And they tried to expand that into the sequel where you can travel on either side of the street and you can play as a paper girl or a paper boy. As you can see, the graphics are extremely lame, not much better than what the original Nintendo could do. It's very easy to die. In fact, there's a couple times that I questioned whether I should have died or not. For example, right here, I'm going down the street, riding the sidewalk, and I hit the fence. The fence isn't even in the sidewalk. How is that possible? And what's the deal with these guys and the couch? They're just walking back and forth in the street trying to intentionally block me? This game is so bad. It's really a stain on the legacy of the great Paperboy. Don't touch this game. Don't play this game. Just stay away. Stay far away from Paperboy 2. You'll thank me. Trust me. Pit Fighter. This is a one-on-one fighting game based on the Atari Games arcade game. The graphics are tiny, the music is bad, the controls are awful. But even worse than all of that is the fact that you get no continues. If you die, that's it. That's the end of the game. I don't know what they were thinking when they came up with that. But there is absolutely no way that anybody could get through this entire game on one credit. The graphics are terrible, of course, but let's not forget the sound and the music, which is just abysmal. The original Pit Fighter game for the arcade is actually pretty fun, and the Genesis game isn't too bad, but this one, stay away from. Stay far, far away. It is one of the worst games ever. Race Drivin. Another Atari Games game that appears on the Super Nintendo. This one is a driving simulator that was in 3D, and honestly, it was kind of revolutionary for the time. The Super Nintendo game runs at a jaw-dropping 3 frames per second. Well, at least that's what it feels like anyway. And whenever you crash, it sounds like you just had an accident in the bathroom. I don't know, it cracks me up. But I'll be honest, I gave this game a chance. I played it for a little while, I was able to get through the track. You just have to know how fast to drive your car. Here we are going through the loop-de-loop, and yep, I made it. Aside from the frame rate and the sound effects, this isn't too bad of a conversion of the original game. It didn't take me very long to get decent at it. Of course, the other problem with the game is that there really isn't a lot of gameplay to it. It's just driving around on a track. So in that sense, it's a little bit boring. Honestly, I'm kind of curious as to who would want to buy this game and play it at home. This is really best suited for an arcade cabinet. Revolution X. This is a shooting game featuring Aerosmith that basically uses the Terminator 2 engine. Your goal here is to shoot as many bad guys as possible who are, I think, trying to take over the world. This game is kind of easy, and honestly, it's probably because I'm playing it on easy mode because I wanted to see as much of the game as possible. And as you can see, the graphics are, I don't know, kind of plain. Even in the stages where there should be a lot of detail, it just feels like a very weak effort. I'm really disappointed here. I can't shoot Aerosmith. There are brief clips of songs in the game, but it just loops the same bit over and over again. What I do find kind of impressive are the cutscenes with the band. There's actually a little bit of voice in the game explaining the story.
If you're watching this, then they've taken over.
Oh no, they've taken over.
Now, find our car and stop the New Order.
I have to find the car and stop the New World Order.
Remember, music is the weapon.
Right, music is the weapon. Gotcha. Then I must have fought this helicopter for about 20 minutes, because I really wanted to get to the car. I finally did. I was a little underwhelmed, honestly.
Looks like you made it. Where you go from here is up to you.
This is a really boring, monotonous shooting game with some very repetitive music clips and the occasional decent audio clip from the band. As monotonous as this game is, I just cannot imagine how long it would take to get to the end. Rise of the Robots. You know, when I first heard about this game, I thought it would be pretty cool. I mean, who wouldn't want to battle other robots in a one-on-one fighting game? Of course, I could be a little biased because I had heard that this was going to come out on the Atari Jaguar, and I was actually excited to get a new fighting game for that system, but yeah, it never came out. But since then, I've had a chance to play the Super Nintendo version, and it was probably a good thing it never came out for the Jag. First of all, you don't get to choose your fighter. You only get to play as this blue robot, and I always got the feeling that maybe he was like a security guard robot. He's like the Barney Fife of robots. The characters are all pre-rendered, and honestly, I have never liked this style of graphics. There's not a whole lot of animation to the characters, and the backgrounds just look completely flat. In fact, look at the way the line scrolling works on this stage. It just makes the background look like a flat cutout. I found the gameplay in this to be, well, frankly a little boring. I was able to spam the same move over and over again to defeat this yellow robot, because unless I did that, there's no way for me to beat him. I'll admit, I kind of like the music in this game. I've always been kind of a fan of techno. This music kind of fits within that genre. But the sound effects are not really that special. You get like the punching and crunching sound effects when you hit your opponent, but not much else. So of course you only get to choose the one character, which means there's not going to be a whole heck of a lot of moves. In fact, I looked up the moves list, and there's only 2 special moves that you can do in the entire game. How lame is that? This is a frankly dull one-on-one fighter where you don't get to choose any characters and get to battle on really boring backgrounds. Road Riot 4-wheel drive. Not another terrible Atari conversion. Ugh. This may be the worst of all of them. This is a racing game that was originally in the arcades, of course, and that version was pretty cool and fun. Now this racing game has a bit of a twist. You're allowed to shoot your opponents for whatever that's worth. I don't see that it's actually slowing them down very much. Not only do you have to avoid getting hit by your opponents, but you also have to avoid these rocks in the middle of the road. Seriously? The graphics are so bad and so lame. I honestly think the Atari 2600 could do a better version of this game. As you can hear, these sounds and the music are just awful, but even worse than that are the controls. I can't stop sliding all over the road. There's really nothing about this game that is enjoyable, and honestly it hurts my heart to watch this. It's too bad there never was a good home conversion of Road Riot 4-wheel drive, because the arcade game is actually pretty cool. The Rocketeer. Now this is a game based on the classic Disney movie, and you start out here by flying your GB airplane in a race. I was racing flat out, and I was not able to beat this first stage at all. I tried numerous times to beat it, and I couldn't even come close. I feel like this game is just totally unfair. The graphics are kind of okay, but the huge screen at the top of the race is completely useless. It would have been better if the small screen was at the top and the big screen was at the bottom. That might have actually been more fun. I understand there's other stages in the game besides this, but I wasn't able to get any further. The music is kind of boring, the controls are awful. It's kind of disappointing, honestly. I would have liked a decent Rocketeer game. Unfortunately, this is not it. Don't play it. Space Ace. This game is nothing like the original arcade Laserdisc game by Don Bluth, because honestly, there's no way the Super Nintendo could have done that game. So instead, we kind of get this action platform style game, and it starts out here where you try to avoid the lasers from, I guess his name is Borf. And eventually I figured out the pattern to avoid the lasers, but when I went a little bit further into the game, I could not get past this part at all. I tried jumping on this platform and then back again, but I just couldn't quite get it. And I really got sick of hearing Dexter say, over and over again. I wanted to smash my controller after hearing that for the 50th time. The graphics and music aren't too bad, but it's really the gameplay in this one that just frustrates the living heck out of me. And a huge contributor to my frustration is also the controls, which are terrible. I feel like I can't quite gauge Dexter's jumps properly. If you were expecting this to be anything like the arcade game, well, I don't know what to tell you there. This game is really not fun, not enjoyable at all. Space Football 1-on-1. Ugh, this one makes me sick. It's a futuristic sports game, kind of like Ball Blazer, where your goal is to grab the space football and try to get it into your opponent's goal. Now, normally when you play a sports game, the field that you play on is, pretty consistent. But no, not in this one. This game has zones where you can only go in a certain direction, and it makes it extremely difficult to get the ball. Getting to the ball is a challenge in and of itself, because if it gets away from you, it travels so far around the stage, it's nearly impossible to catch up to it. And when you do catch up to it, there's almost no way to get it into the goal before your opponent takes it from you. I'll give this game some credit because it's got some interesting graphics, but for some reason, it just makes me queasy just watching this. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. The sound effects are lame, and the music is just, I don't know, it's very muted and not exciting at all. But ultimately, of course, it's the gameplay that matters, and the gameplay here just absolutely sucks. The Wizard of Oz. Oof, this one hurts. You play as Dorothy on a mission to escape this evil land of Oz. You can collect these yellow gems to attack your enemies with, but you have to avoid these lemons that are falling out of the trees, which can be kind of tricky. You also have to contend with frogs and birds and giant chairs. When you get to the next stage, you have to battle these cactus cats and avoid these pits that have springs at the bottom where you can jump through the actual walls. Wow, who programmed this game anyway? The graphics are actually pretty nice and colorful, and the music isn't too terrible. But for me, it's really the difficulty in this game. Wouldn't you think this would be, like, super easy for kids? I mean, yeah, I know I suck at games and everything, but come on. I don't know, I just didn't find this one enjoyable, and I didn't even get to the part where you have to be careful with your jumps. So a lot of people say this is one of the worst games for the Super Nintendo, and it's hard to disagree with that considering its difficulty, collision detection, and frankly, boring gameplay. There's so many other great platform games out there, just don't bother with this one. I'm sorry, Dorothy, that your game is terrible, but, I still love your movie. Alright, well, that is going to do it. I can't take any more terrible games today. Have you played these games, and do you agree that they're as awful as people say? Please let me know down in the comments. I thank you very much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.